Good afternoon, everybody. This is Tuck Talk number 4, and I'm Gary Tucker. Today's topic is a very serious one, and it may not be appropriate for children, and I'd like my viewing audience to take that into consideration and perhaps take this opportunity to make a decision on whether or not to view this in the presence of your own. Amanda Marshall sings a song which contains the lyrics, "Everybody has a story that could break your heart," and I believe that to be a relatively true statement. Life is tough. That's the first line in Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled. And Scott Peck speaks of the necessity of being able to acknowledge this truth that life is tough, but to do so without an emotional involvement, without a negative reaction to it. And I think there's a lot of common sense in that. And I also think it takes a long time to realize exactly what he is trying to share with us with that sentiment. One thing I do know is that there's an awful lot of people in the world who are born into dysfunctional family units, and that by default, the children who are raised in those family units become dysfunctional themselves. One of my primary caretakers was a violent alcoholic, and wouldn't you know it, I can look back at this point in my life and realize that between the ages of 15 and 25 years of age, I became very violent. And although I never considered myself an alcoholic, I sure as hell drank like one. Man, I can also look back and see that 98% of the problems that I created for myself, alcohol played either a significant role or a contributing role. So, yeah, I drank a lot. I also did a lot of drugs along the way. In fact, there's probably very few on the planet that I haven't done at one point or another. I shied away from relationships in a serious sense, primarily because I looked at my parents' marriage and thought, wow, this is a sham. What a horrible institution this is. I certainly don't want anything to do with this in my own life. However, the time came when I fell in love, and I asked the one and only woman up to this point that I've ever asked to marry me. And she laughed in my face and she said, "No." Well, there's nothing quite like that to trigger a massive sense of abandonment in a person who already has abandonment issues. And so it was with me. I tried to cope with that particular rejection, or what I perceived to be a rejection, and was unsuccessful in doing so. I think with those of us who suffer from abandonment issues, if we sense that we are about to be abandoned, one of the ways that we cope with that is to reject the other person strongly and severely, and in this manner push them away from ourselves, abandon them and reject them as a means of softening the inevitable blow that we feel coming our own way. And this is what I did to my partner at that time. I rejected her, I abandoned her, I treated her like dirt, and the relationship ended. After this, immediately after this, I found myself on a beach in Washington, on the coast, on the Pacific coast. And I took some extremely strong LSD and found myself alone in the middle of the night about 3 a.m. on this tremendous expanse of beach that stretched for miles and miles. And essentially, I was lost. I couldn't find the people that I had come with. There was nobody else there. And it was me, the beach, and a huge expanse of ocean stretching all the way to Japan. As I stared across the water and up into the sky, I experienced the most phenomenal period of self-revelation that I ever had before or since. The sky became a giant drive-in theater screen for me, and my whole life began to rapidly play back before my eyes. But what was different was this time around, reviewing all of the incidents of my life, I was able to see how all of my actions had been both perceived by the other person and how my actions had been felt and experienced by the other person or the other people that were involved. Wow. One thing became painfully clear very quickly, and that is that I had hurt a lot of people in a lot of different ways during the course of my life. And I became incredibly ashamed and incredibly embarrassed and distraught as I recognized the widespread damage that I had done to most of the people that I had encountered, at least between the ages of 15 and 25. I was so overwhelmed by the end of this viewing, and I don't know for sure how long it went on, but it was at least an hour, and it was comprehensive, and it was extensive, and I felt it on the most deeply emotional levels possible. And I began to ask myself during the viewing, why did anyone ever like me at all? How did I ever have a friend? How could anyone ever have even spoken to me with a degree of friendship? I was such an obnoxious asshole. I did so many things that hurt so many people in so many different ways. And for the first time to that point in my life, I decided that I wasn't worthy of living anymore. And I made a decision that I would kill myself. I kicked my shoes off for some reason. I don't see now why it really would have made a difference one way or the other. And I began to walk into the ocean with the intent of continuing to walk until the water became too deep, at which point I had decided I would just swim towards Japan until I completely ran out of physical energy and I drowned. And I walked up to my knees, and all the while I'm crying. Tears are flowing down my face. I'm disgusted with myself. And the events that I just witnessed on this movie theater of the night sky were plaguing me. The horror of them, the horror of myself, the unworthiness of myself. But it kept nagging at me. Why did anyone ever like you? Why did anyone ever like you at all? And I was up to my waist in the ocean at this point, and the waves were bouncing up as far as my chest. And I became aware of what I refer to as the match head, a pea-sized quality inside of me that was good, that was genuine, that was real, that was true, that was valuable, that was loving, that was caring, that mattered, that loved other people, that had nothing but every living thing's best interest in mind. And I was almost startled to find this. It was like I hadn't been aware of it in quite some time. And there it was. And I said, what the hell is that? I suppose due to the reading that I might have done up to that point, I referred to it as my true self, a point of consciousness that constitutes perhaps the most genuine part of my whole being. A small, dense chunk of energy that falls outside the realm of my physical body or my intellectual body or my emotions, and yet at the same time was more me than anything could possibly be. And I turned my eyes up to the sky at that point, having discovered the match head, the point of consciousness, my true self, whatever this tiny little bit of goodness was still inside of me. And I said to the life force, universal consciousness, pick your own name for it. Look, I promise that in lieu of killing myself at this moment, I'll turn around and I'll walk back out of this ocean, and I will devote the rest of my life to nurturing this tiny little pea, this tiny little match head that I've found inside myself. And I'll learn more about it, and I'll help it develop, and I'll treat it like my child, and I'll help it to grow, and I'll make it bigger, because I accept that it is the only part of me worth keeping. And I did turn around, and I did walk out of that ocean, and I've spent the rest of my life, to the best of my ability, keeping that promise. It was the best decision I've ever made. Life didn't get much easier immediately following that point. But my perception of life totally changed. The problems that I encountered, and some of them were huge, massive. Everybody's got a story that would break your heart. I had lots of them. You guys have had lots of them. But as those problems came up, as those challenges came up, as those failures presented themselves to me, I never forgot that promise, and I never forgot that part of myself that is so valuable, and that is so real, and that is so worth taking care of. Folks, I know all about depression. I know how overwhelming it can get. I know how hopeless things can seem at times, how you can't see a solution through the sea of problems that sometimes just compound and wallop you one after the other till you're just beaten down and bleeding and caught and frustrated and feeling absolutely powerless. I know that feeling. I know it well. I'm here to tell you today that suicide, that taking your own life, is not the answer. Honest to God, that little match head, that little pea that I found inside of me is inside of you. Chances are, the piece that you have inside of you is probably way more self-evident than the little tiny chunk that I found inside of me. Nurture it, learn about it, study it, take care of it, help it to grow. It is who you are. It is the part of you that matters. Not your bank account, not your job, not your spouse, not your children, not your parents, not your fancy car, not your shitty car. Find the match head, find your true self. Connect with that piece of yourself that's pure consciousness. That piece of yourself that lets you know instinctively that everything in this world is connected, including you, and that we're all in this thing called life together, and that it all matters, that you matter. There are 7.2 billion people on this planet, but you're the only you. You're absolutely and completely unique. What you have to offer to this world has never been available to this world before, or never will be again. That uniqueness in itself makes you invaluable to the Creator. The creative force. Whatever it was that led to you being here in the first place, to all of nature being here, to the other 7.2 billion people being here. It all matters. I don't have a lot of funny jokes today. I do want to tell you that for what it matters, I care. I believe in you. I believe in the individual. I believe in the match head inside of everybody that I encounter. Even if I can't see it, even when faced with the most raving, lunatic assholes, I gain a degree of comfort and compassion knowing that the match head is inside of them too. And everything that I've said to you, I would say to them as well. They are unique. They matter. They can evolve. They can become more of that which is good inside them. Don't give up, people. Don't give up. There is always a way to solve a problem. That's what life is. Problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution. Problems don't have to be viewed as a negative. A mistake that a lot of us make is to do just that, to take every problem and respond to it with a negative emotional energy. And that leads to depression all on its own. I'm gonna go down a little path here that may be a little bit hard to follow if you don't have an electrical background of any kind, but for me, it's always been the best way to understand what I'm about to say. There's an electrical formula, E equals I times R. That translates as voltage equals amps multiplied by resistance. Now, to take those three terms and to turn them into complete layman's language, let me try this, okay? The amount of personal power that you have, the potential power that you have as a human being, equals your actions multiplied by the problems in your life, by the resistance that you face. So, one more time, your personal power equals your actions multiplied by the problems in your life. What this mathematical formula suggests is that without problems to overcome, you have no personal power. Problems are absolutely essential to developing personal power and should be viewed as such. They are an opportunity to increase your personal power. You should jump at the opportunity to overcome a problem every chance you get. And in doing so, you'll become more of who you really are. It's a beautiful world. It's a beautiful day. And whoever you are, I know you're a beautiful person, even if it doesn't look like it most of the time. You got that match head inside you. You're 1 in 7.2 billion. Nobody's like you. You matter. Your life matters. Don't kill yourself. Don't put an end to it. Start again if you have to. Do anything you have to. But keep on going. Everything's connected. And we're all in this thing called life together. Have a good afternoon. Bye for now.